So to start off in SketchUp, I already did create this, but if you want, you can use inches and feet or millimeters, whatever is best for you. Again, when you're typing in dimensions in SketchUp, you could type in 6 inches or 150 millimeters, and SketchUp will automatically do that conversion for you. So in some respects, they are unitless. So we have our SketchUp file set up. The next thing we want to do is we want to start to model our building. And I think it makes sense to model from the bottom up. You could certainly model this in different ways, but the bottom up I think makes the most sense to me. And so with this, our overall foundation is 24 feet by 30 feet 8. So let's start by drawing that box. And again, this is going to be a little bit long and drawn out in terms of just watching me model, but I want to help you through this project by modeling it in a few steps the way I would, and just kind of show you my methodology. So let's go here, and because our entry door, I believe, is on the longer side, it really doesn't matter, but I'm gonna model it this way. So let's do 30 feet 8 inches, and then we're gonna go 24 feet this way. 24 feet this way, and we're going to close off this box here if it lets me. And it doesn't want to seem to let me. All right, we'll type it in. 30 feet 8 inches, and then close off that box. The next thing I want to do is do the inside foundation wall. And so we're just going to use the offset tool here, and we're going to offset this in 8. And since we're in inches, it's automatically going to be 8 inches, not 8 feet. The next thing we want to do is we want to look at this middle devising wall. So up here we have a wall. The wall is actually 11 feet from the inside of the foundation wall. So let's model that. And so we're going to go over here and we're going to draw in 11 feet from the inside of our wall. 11 feet. And we'll find that mark, and then we'll just draw a line across here. Again, this isn't the most captivating thing to watch, but I just kind of want to walk you through my techniques. And then we'll model this wall across here. And so realistic with these two parts, we actually don't want it filled in, so I'm just going to delete our two parts here. And so that's really our foundation walls. And we do have this area outside here as well, so let's draw that. And if we look back at our PDF, in my case, we are 4'4" plus 8 inches, so that would be 5 feet. And then we are a total of I think I actually did this wrong in the other class. So we are 12 feet plus 8 inches. That's not confusing. So plus 8 inches twice, so that's 16 inches. So that's 13 foot 4, right? 13 foot 4, 13 foot 6, 13 foot 4. Yeah. So if you don't enjoy doing math, we can do it this way as well. So we could go 8 inches, then we can go 12 feet, and then we can go another 8 inches. And so we're going to go out, let's find our outer mark here, and we're going to go out 5 feet. Go across to our outermost mark in 5 feet. And then this part would be, we're going to go in 8 inches. The math part is not meant to be scary. I think the cool thing is you don't actually need to do math if you don't want to. You can literally just put the dimensions in, and SketchUp will do that math for you. And then here we're just going to erase these little pieces. And I guess I can erase these ones at the same time. And we'll erase these ones as well. And so there we go. And then we just have one last part, which is our staircase area here, I believe. So that is 5 feet. So 4 foot 10 to the inside and then 2 feet out, I believe. 1 foot 4 plus 8 is 2 feet. So let's just go out 2 feet. And then we're going to go over, let's go over here. Let's go over our 8 inches. And this was, I think, 4 foot 4, 4 foot 10. 4 foot 10. And then we're going to go over our 8 inches again. And then we'll fill in this gap. So here we go. We've got our foundation largely here. And let's erase a couple more of these lines. And then let's just, again, delete our center parts here. And so now we have our foundation walls. And so what I'm going to do with these, I'm actually going to extrude down, not up. And so just from a mental perspective, like I think it makes sense for the foundation to be down, not up. And really my ground plane will be on that kind of lower level. So let's do that. So let's extrude this down. And how far do we want to go down? Let's find that out. So let's go back here. And we're going to go over to our section. And over here on the side, this part's going to get a tiny bit confusing. So we have 8 foot 6 to the bottom of the footings. And then we have, and that's to our top of our foundation wall. So 8 foot 6 down. And so you notice that we're to the bottom of our footings, not to the bottom of our walls. And so we're going to do some more math. And I promise this won't actually be complicated math. Up here, it says we have 8-inch poured concrete foundation walls on 20 by 6-inch footings. And so the 6 is our height. So realistically, we're actually going down, and actually I think it's 8 feet, 8 foot 6. Oh yeah, 8 foot 6 here. So we're going to go down 8 feet, not that number. So let's go down 8 feet. And we're just going to type in 8 feet here. And so there we go, we have our walls here. And so you're going to see me do this a lot today, but we're going to grab all of this and we're going to group it. And again, I like to group anything that is not repeating. So we're not going to have another set of foundation walls. We're not going to have another set of floors or second floor walls or first floor walls. So I group those elements. Things that we could potentially repeat, like furniture, cabinetry, a TV, that kind of stuff, I would make those into components. So that's kind of how I differentiate that. Things that don't repeat are groups. Things that do potentially or could potentially repeat would be components. So good question. I assume there's probably something you can see your groups with, but we are going to also apply tags to them. So I think your groups may show up in... That's maybe not a great question for me to answer, but a group. I wonder if they will show up in the warehouse. Yeah, maybe. Maybe I'll get back to you on that. I'm not sure exactly. And you could probably Google it while I'm doing this and let me know too. That'd be great. I don't use SketchUp daily, so I think not a great question for me to ask, but we will be doing tags with this. So let me just hide my material panel here. And so we have our walls here. And I think tags are a great way to stay organized. Groups, I'm not really that concerned with groups. Groups are just a way of like keeping things together. But tags will be ultimately a little more useful. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a new tag. I'm going to call this a walls-foundation. And typically what I'll do is I'll have a bit of hierarchy. So I'll do walls-first floor, walls-second floor, floor-basement, floor-garage, floor-first floor. And so that's kind of how I'll keep myself a little bit organized. And I'm going to have separate tags for those different parts, but I'm going to name them in a way where I can, or they kind of make sense and they flow with everything else going on. So we have these walls selected. We created our new tag. and we'll go up here and we'll just apply that tag to our group. And so this next step is maybe a little bit annoying, but we're going to basically trace our building now. And once we trace this building, and I do not know why I went so far outside there. Once we trace this building, what we're going to do is actually create our footings. And so now that we have this, and I think I might have one more to fill in here. You'll see that when I finish, it closes in that. But let's just turn off our walls for a second. And so this is obviously our foundation, the trace of our foundation walls. And if you remember before, I said our footings were 20 inches by 6 inches. So 20 inches is our width. And just to do some mental math here again, our foundation walls are 8 inches. So 20 inches minus 8 inches is 12 inches, right? I can do math today. And then we want our footing to stick inside and outside of that wall. And so we want to divide that by 2. So 12 divided by 2 is 6. So what we're going to do is we're going to offset this outwards 6 inches, and we're going to offset it inwards 6 inches. Make sense? Following? Maybe? So let's offset it out. It'll look better once we actually get to it here. So let's do 6 inches. I traced the outside of the walls, so we're only offsetting at 6 inch outwards. But for the inwards, we can offset 8 then 6. Yeah. So to your point, I could do that. So we'll offset in 8, and we could offset in 6. And then what I want to do is actually delete these interior walls because we don't need them anymore. We do have to do a few more lines on the interior, but this gives us a pretty good basis to start. So that's kind of the perimeter of our footing. The one thing that you'll note is this footing definitely goes straight this way. And let's go over 20 inches over here. And bring that across like that. And then this one's going to be a little silly, but it's going to go like this. And honestly, if I was doing this on site, I would probably not frame this in. I would probably just make that solid, just because having that little airspace, you'll actually never be able to get the formwork out of that. So I would just frame that solid. But for all intents and purposes, we can leave that. So that's what we're looking at here. And then the only other part we have to do is this middle wall going across. So I'm going to turn back on our foundation walls, and I'm just going to retrace that interior line so that I know its exact location. And let's do. I actually probably didn't need to trace it. I probably could have just went over 6 inches like this. I'll save a step. And I guess I'll just do that on this side as well. And there's some more details that we have in our project that we're not going to do right away, but this is just kind of the basis of our foundation walls. And then let's just erase a couple of these lines that we don't need. These lines here. And so that's our foundation, our footings. And let's just go through here and delete these center parts now. And our last step is to actually extrude this down again 6 more inches. And when we bring our foundation walls back, it looks like our building is proper. It's like sitting, grounded in the ground. And so let's just hide that for one last second, and let's do our fun part, which is grouping. Make group, and then we'll add a tag here. We'll call these footings. And we'll apply our footing tag to that, and then we can bring it all back. So that's the start of our building there. The next thing we want to do is start working on our floor. And we have a floor, we actually have 2 different floors in here. So you'll notice when you look at this in section, we actually have a garage floor that's lower in concrete and a wood floor that's higher in wood. So let's start with the wood floor. And so this is going to be a little bit more math because, you know, we love math. We want to figure out how tall our joists are. And so we do have a number over here, 1 3/8. I don't know exactly what that is, but let's go over here to our floor plans. And we're in our basement floor. And so typically when we're framing, we're always framing the floor above. And so in here we see our 2x10s at 6 inches on center. And so that's our floor type for the floor above because we're seeing what we're framing above there. And so that's our floor type. The second number we have is our 5/8 subfloor. And so let's bring those in. So we have our 2x10s and our 5/8. And the probably the more complicated part of that piece is our 2x10s are not actually 2x10s. Do we all know that? Everyone? Some people? Okay. So, you know, the 2x10s are what's called a nominal size. And so typically lumber will start off as a 2x10 and get milled down to its finished size, which in our case in Ontario and Canada is 1.5 by 9 1/4. So our floor height is 9 1/4. So I just drew a box on our wood floor area, and we're going to go up 9 1/4. And I'm going to remove the 4 I put in there. And so the next part is going up with our subfloor. So our subfloor is 5/8. And so we're just going to go up again another 5/8 of an inch. And so that'll be our total thickness of our floor. And again, I didn't have to do math because we just, you know, put those numbers in separately and made that a little bit easier by just doing it that way, right? So now let's go in here and let's do our other fun step, which is selecting. Let's make it as a group. And let's add a new tag here. Let's call this floor, and we'll call this first. And then we'll apply this to our first floor. And so now that we have our first floor, let's actually trace that floor again using our box tool. And just like we have with our joists, our walls are a nominal number as well. So our studs are 2x6. So our 2x6 is actually 5.5 inches. And so we're going to offset this in by 5.5 inches. Like so. And now what we want to do is extrude these walls up to their proper height. And so let's look back at our drawings here and let's go to our section. And we have 9 feet from the top of subfloor to the top of the plate. So that one's actually a pretty easy number. And so let's extrude that up 9 feet. And we just have to find our area there and let's go up 9 feet. And again, let's do our favorite kind of process here of selecting. And I'm just going to be very careful to not select the floor. Let's go to make group. And let's call this walls dash first. And with this, I'm actually going to hide our floor, our footings, and our foundation walls for a second. And if you see in this group, we actually did place a bottom. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to double click into my group. I'm going to click the pointer icon and delete that piece inside there because we don't want to have a floor on top of a floor. And then when you end up placing materials, it's going to kind of like ghost. It's going to show both. So we just want to be careful we're not modeling both of those. And so there we go. We've got our building kind of rocking away here. And so I think that's kind of the start of the easy part. And I think now this is going to get a little bit more complicated. So how this is going to get more complicated is we look over here. We have our garage floor. It is lower. So it is actually 1 inch and 1 foot 1 5/8 lower than our top of foundation wall. So let's do that. And I'm actually going to make one other change after I do that, but we'll get started with this first. So let's draw a box here. So we're just going to fill in this hole we have, like so. And that was And we're actually not going to be able to see it. So let me just go back here, and I'm going to turn off our foundation walls. So again, using the tags, it's actually great because you can keep organized and show and hide things when you want. So let's do this. Let's go down 1 foot, 1 5/8 of an inch. And then here we're actually just going to delete our upper parts of this. No, I don't want to delete that. And I mean, we could hide more stuff just to. And I guess I did not apply a tag to this, so that's a good catch. So we've got our floor here. So let's extrude this down 4 inches. And I only know that because I just did this in the last class, but we have a 4-inch concrete slab. So let's extrude that down 4 inches. And let's select that and call that our new layer. So let's make group, tag. So let's call this floor dash garage. And that's our garage floor there. And we do need to apply our tag to that. So now that disappears. So there we go. We've got our floor there. And you can see our floor is sunken in. So the one other thing that actually I didn't do before that's going to make this a little bit more complicated is, again, part of the math part, but if we're talking about trying to model this really accurately, I think it matters. And so the one thing you'll notice is when you zoom in, our wall, our top of our concrete is actually 1.5 inches lower than our floor. And that's because we have a wood plate between our floor and our top of concrete. And so I'm actually going to physically model that. And so to do that, I'm not going to model the plate right now, but I'm going to make that gap there. So it's going to be a little weird because we're going to have a hole there. But what I'm going to do is go to camera, and I'm going to go to parallel projection. So parallel projection just means that we're looking at it like almost like a CAD file, I guess you could say. And before I do anything, I'm just going to grab the floor and our walls above, and I'm just going to move them up 1.5 inches, just so that we can create that gap for that sill plate for later. And again, this will just make this a little bit more dimensionally accurate. And so let's go 1.5 inches. And so again, we just have that little gap in there. And we'll deal with that later, but at least that's there. And so why I did that was when we start to go look at this next part, I want to make sure our walls are the proper height for this, because we're going to actually lower our foundation in our garage areas. So you can see here our foundation is 8 inches above the slab. So when you actually do that math, our foundation is actually going to be at 2 different heights. Reality is, if I was drawing this and building this, I may actually just keep the foundation all at the same height, because it'll just be so much easier for the concrete former and the concrete contractor to actually do that work. And if the concrete sticks out a little bit more to the ground, we can cover that on the outside, but it actually is better for rot and stuff like that, so we're not worried about that over time with the building. So let's lower our walls to 8 inches below, or 8 inches above. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select our group for our foundation walls. We're going to go into here, open this up, and what we're going to do is we're going to measure up 8 inches from our floor. We're going to go up 8. And once I find that dot right there, I'm just going to go straight across to the other side. And now that we have this here like this, we can actually just extrude this in. And we're essentially eliminating that foundation wall in that area. And I'm just going to go all the way around and do that. And we'll just extrude this part through and through again. And then this part we can extrude all the way back to there. And then the last part is I can just turn off that little piece, and that one's already gone. So, and then I guess I'll turn off this piece here. Just make that look uniform, so that looks good. And we're going to stay here for a second. So the one thing you'll also notice, especially in the presentations that we were looking at earlier, is the garage door. Let me just go back into here. The garage door on some of these projects is down in the concrete. So the garage door is on grade. It's on the floor level, but the slab or the walls actually go higher than the slab. So we want to cut that door location. So where is the door? So let's look here at our first floor. And again, some more math, just because we love math. We are 11 feet, half an inch to the center of the door. And so, we're 6'4" to the center of the door. And then that wall is 7 inches thick. I don't know why it's 7, not 8, but it's 7 inches thick. That doesn't make any sense, to be honest with you. But so we have a 7-inch thick wall, really 8 inches, so 6'4" plus 7 is 7'1". So 7'1" to the center of the door from the outside of the wall. Following the math. And so the reason why we give center of door openings is because we're trying to show intent. We want to show that we want the door to be centered in a certain location. The other thing is we don't know the rough opening of the door. So a window company may have a 1/4 inch or 3/4 inch rough opening. They may have a 1 inch rough opening. And so when we say the center of the door, the contractor doesn't have to artificially move the dimensions every time. We're just always kind of forcing them to do math, which is what it is. But I mean, it's not hard math. So 7'1" minus half the door, which is 4. So 7'1" minus 4 is 3'1". So I think I made that more complicated than it is, but I just mainly wanted to walk through my thinking and how I was kind of rationalizing that. So let's do that. And so let's go here, and we're going to draw a pencil line 3 feet 1 inch in. And we're going to draw that line across. Where is that line? Right here. Draw that across. And then our door is 8 feet. And I'm not going to worry about the rough opening. Like, theoretically, we do want to make that opening a little bit bigger, but I'm not going to worry about that right now. Let's just call this 8 feet across. And it is, there's not much left here. And so now that we have this, we can extrude this down to our floor height. The reality is when you pour a floor in a garage, typically you would actually lower the opening lower than the floor, and then you'd have the floor spill out, so you don't have that gap like we see in this model right now. But I think for modeling purposes, that makes sense. If it makes you feel better, you could lower it down like this, and then we would just have to edit the slab and make the slab go out. And so I'll just add these lines here. I think sometimes this extra effort is a little bit annoying, but it does make the project look more real. So now you can see that our floor extends out like that, and that looks much more real in terms of how it would actually be built. So that's how we have our garage floor. And so now that we've done that, we can actually model the rest of our walls. And so I'm going to open up our wall layer for our wall group for our first floor walls. And I'm going to add another box here, and we're going to add it from the outside of here all the way to the outside of there. And let's offset that in our 5.5 inches again. 0.5 inches. And we can delete the center of this with our pencil. So we're only extruding these walls. And we actually don't need to extrude this wall double. So we're actually going to just bring this across here like this. And I just find the offset button is easier to create this. I'm going to bring that in. And then we're just going to erase these two lines here. And so now that we've done that, we can extrude this up. And because of this, we actually don't need to do math. We're just extruding it up to the same height. So no math required there, which is nice. And once you've done this, we can actually eliminate the line in between these parts. And it just looks like it's just dropped. There is, I guess, a datum line there right now, but so you can't really see that. But so that's what that looks like. Let's just close the group for a second. So, you know, it looks like we have all of our first floor walls now. We do want to do our garage door, and so our garage door is going to be 8 feet tall from the slab, not from the top of the wall. And so we're going to start our pencil down on our slab here. We're just going to go up 8 feet. And we're going to go over our 8 feet. And then back down to here. And we can just extrude this in now. Obviously, we've got more openings to model, but that gets us started with that. And so that's kind of what we have for our building. And let's, I don't know how much further I'm going to go with this, but let's maybe do a couple more things here. Let's model our second floor. And so we'll put our floor on there. And then just to verify, usually people will make the floor the same, but we're on our first floor, so we're seeing the structure above. So in this case, we have the same 2x10s with 5/8 sheathing. So let's go up our 9 1/4, and then we'll go up our 5/8 again. And so that's our floor, and then let's do our favorite technique here. Let's group, make group, and then let's add a tag. We'll call this floor, and we'll call this second, and we'll apply that tag to there. And there we go, we have our second floor. And then we theoretically have walls upstairs, and so we could model those next. And we'll do the same thing, we'll offset in our 5.5 inches. And we'll need to verify our height, and so our height here is, let's just see, 8 feet. Cool. Nice easy number. So let's go up our 8 feet. What is going on here? Let's hide our second floor. I just deleted the center there. Let's see if we can extrude that now. There we go. Let's go up 8 feet. And those are our second floor walls. And let's just make those a group as well. Make group. And we'll add a new tag. We'll call this walls second. And it is obviously a little bit of work to do this, and I think I applied those as floor, didn't I? I did, yep. Wall second. There we go. It is a little bit of work to add all the tags, but again, it just makes it easy because you can turn on and off stuff that you don't want to see or you're not ready to see. So that's that. Probably the only other thing that we'll do today with this is we have our outdoor porch area here. So let's just take a look at our drawings and see what's going on with this. So our porch looks like it steps up and is at the same height as our finished floor. Maybe it's down like 2 inches or something. I don't think there's any dimensions that talk about that explicitly. So let's just flip through our drawings here. Yeah, I don't think there's anything that really talks about that. Visually, you can see below the door, it looks like there's a sill below the door, and then the floor is below that. So that's kind of how I'm coming up with that idea. So let's go back to here. And where am I going? Let's go back to SketchUp. And we can trace this area here. And I think this part is bumped out for our stairs, actually. Let's look at that in floor plan. Yeah, so our stairs are bumped out, so it's really, we actually don't want to trace this other part. We want to trace here in. Like that. And then let's extrude that up. And we want it to be at the same level, but we want it to go 2 inches down. And I'm doing that because I can see that, and I know that's probably how they're doing it. But you probably could just leave it flat if you wanted to. But I'm kind of showing you some nuances of what I see when I'm looking at this. And so we've got our slab piece there, and then we may have a couple steps down. And so, you know, if you were to measure from this, because we obviously are amazing at stairs now since we did stairs a few weeks ago, we're 2'1". So I would say we're probably 4 steps to grade. So yeah, 2'1", 4 steps, basically 6 inches per step. Often on the exterior, a lot of people will keep steps to a little bit of a smaller number on the exterior, not necessarily go up to 7, but we can play with that number. So let's just go over here, and we can use this first piece as 1 step. And so if we have 4 steps. Is that what it's in the actual drawing? Yeah. So if we go 3, we can do 3 steps. So 3 steps. If we use our math last time, we used 11 inches for the run. So let's go out 11 inches. So 3 times 11 would be 33 inches. And then we're going to go down 7 inches times 3. 7 inches times 3. There's probably actually a more exact number for that, but we got 21 inches down. And we're going to edit this bottom foundation in a second, which is kind of where I'm going with this. So we'll go out 11, and we'll go down 7. The one thing about exterior stairs, and we'll go 11. Oh, I went 11 feet, I think. The one thing about exterior stairs is you can actually change grade. So you could just say the stairs are 7 inches, and then you can just slightly lower the grade with, you know, a shovel, technically, right? And so the exterior stairs are kind of cool in that way. We have a little bit more flexibility. So we'll go down 7 inches. And it looks like the steps may be a bit longer, but that's fine. I don't know exactly why. Maybe the steps are narrower. But theoretically, this is what you could have for a step. Going across like that. I don't know. Oh, there's a line there, that's why. No. Let's hide our foundation. Yeah, I do have a line going across there. So we can extrude this over, and that's kind of your steps. And actually, the steps don't go all the way over, do they? They go over to the edge of that wall below. And what maybe is going on with this is maybe they have 2 of the steps on that concrete footing, and the last step is the ground physically. So that's maybe why we don't see it. We have this gap here. And so what I could do to fix that is I'll just extrude this out 2 inches, and that leaves this with 1. And we could actually make this first step nothing and bring this back 12. So that might be another way to do it. And so you're showing your steps like that. So that's probably what's going on there. And then the last part of this is we need to make this a group. And because this is kind of a mess right now, let's hide a lot of our groups. And let's make this piece itself a group. And I'm going to make the whole thing a group. You could split into more than one, but let's call this floor. We'll call this entry. And let's just erase this line here. And so we've got our steps there. Let's close that group. Let's open up our foundation walls. And what we want to do is we want to have this entry floor area go straight across. We want to lower this step area straight across down. So I'm just going to bring a line across there, and you know what, I didn't edit my group either, so let's double click in. Alright, cool. Let's do that. And what you could do here is you could actually just artificially drop it a bunch and then move it back up after. So let's delete the centerpiece, And let's just drop this down a whole bunch here. And we could actually erase these lines here as well. And then I'm just going to turn back on our entry. And then what I can do now is I can just raise this up so it's perfectly below the bottom. So yeah, so that's kind of the building here. Obviously, lots more to model, but that gets us into a really good place with the model, right? So we've modeled the door, we've modeled the steps, we modeled the floor in a few spots, and so we largely have, you know, the bare bones of the building, and that was probably not all of the time, but probably like 45 minutes. And so, I'm not saying that should take you 45 minutes. Like, even if it takes you 3 or 4 hours to do what I did, I don't think it'll take that long, but you know, maybe 2 hours, maybe double the amount of time. That's not terrible, right? So we can get pretty pretty quickly moving through this building. And so what I'm going to do for the next few weeks is I want to try to model the building with you, and we'll probably have some different things to show in the slides, and depending on if they're relevant right away, I may or may not show them, or might just wait till later to show them. But I want to kind of show you my steps modeling through this building and how I would approach things, and obviously recording this too, so you'll have that to watch back. So any questions with this at all? Cool.